He ran on top of the water and advanced toward Hyperion. Their swords clashed, and the impact on their blades sent a shockwave through the water. Up close, Hyperion's eyes were so bright they were distracting. Luckily, he managed to slide out of the way and made a tidal wave tumble on top of the Titan. Hyperion rose from the water, and he was real pissed with Percy now. "You will pay for trapping Atlas a second time," Hyperion growled. "You will burn, Jackson!" A wave of force slammed Percy through the air, almost like the trick Kronos pulled back on the bridge. He got pushed 300 yards away and fell flat on his back. As he got up, the Titan closed in on him. Hyperion was fast, but when Percy swung his sword, the Titan seemed to be pushed back by a strong amount of wind with a few sprinkles of water. Percy was never able to do that with his sword before. Where was that coming from? Then, he looked down and just noticed he was standing in his own personal hurricane. Clouds of water vapor swirled around him. "Percy!" Grover called. "Make him come over here!" Percy kept slashing and jabbing, and more winds kept pushing Hyperion backwards. He got closer and closer to where the satyrs were standing. Then, the satyrs played their pipes, and roots popped out of the ground and wrapped around the Titan's arms. Then, even more plant life grew all around him. "No! You can't imprison me!" he yelled. "I am Hyperion!" He was cut short as the bark closed around his face. The Titan was defeated. "Who would have thought an evil Titan could make such a nice maple tree?" Grover said. Then Annabeth cut the celebration short when she announced what she had seen in her shield. She mentioned while the satyrs had Hyperion tied up, her shield had shown an image of an even bigger group of monsters marching down the street toward the Empire State Building. And indeed, she was right. From the looks of things, it seemed like Kronos simply sent his expendables south of Central Park as a diversion. They were just across the street from the Empire State before Percy and his friends came up behind them. "For Olympus!" Percy shouted, and together, he and his friends charged. For the next minute, they fought like never before, slicing and dicing through monsters one after the other. But no matter how many they defeated, more just took their place. Percy and Annabeth watched each other's backs. Grover was bonking monsters on their heads. Dahlia was scaring away monsters with her shield. Mrs. O'Leary was picking up monsters with her mouth and throwing them around. And yet, all this still wasn't enough. The problem was that there were so few of them left to hold anything. In the process, some of their friends laid wounded on the streets, or even dead. Finally, they cut their way through the mob and made it to the doorstep of the Empire State. But then, from down the street, a whole other mob of monsters were charging straight toward them. Percy knew he couldn't keep this up all day. He felt about 1,000 gallons of sweat dripping down his whole body. Apparently, being invulnerable doesn't mean you won't get tired. Percy wondered what were all the other campers who were watching the bridges and tunnels were doing. Even if they knew what was happening over here, Percy doubted they could make it in time, and he couldn't look away long enough to check the video shield. Then, they heard a hunting horn in the distance, but it wasn't from the huntresses. The echo of the horn seemed to come from all directions. Then, on either side of them, the sound of trampling hooves came down the street. The cavalry had arrived! "Party!" a drunken centaur shouted. Chiron had arrived with his relatives, aka the party ponies, in the nick of time. The party ponies chased the monsters down the street as far as the eye could see. Chiron asked Annabeth to set up a perimeter around the Empire State while he and his relatives took care of the remaining monsters. Percy wanted to go out there and help Chiron finish the job, but Annabeth advised against it. It was obvious that the centaurs were covering for them so they could make time to regain their strength. Percy didn't like it, but he knew she was right, so they prepared for their next attack. They set up a 2-block perimeter with a command tent next to the entrance of the Empire State Building. Chiron had less than 50 centaurs throughout the country that answered his call. But even that wasn't enough troops to defend a few blocks. Then, Chiron told them that the Olympians were getting too exhausted in their fight with Typhon. He mentioned that Mr. D got whacked away across the country yesterday, and no one had heard a word from him since. "Typhon may arrive this time tomorrow," Chiron continued, "if he and Kronos combine forces." "Then what chance do we have?" Percy asked. "We can't hold out another day." "We have to," Dahlia said. "I'll try putting more traps around the perimeter." "I shall help you with that," Chiron said, and they left Percy alone with Annabeth. Percy," she said, even with the Centaur's help, I'm starting to think—" "I know," he said. He had a bad feeling that this might be the last chance they had to talk, and he felt like there were a million things he hadn't told her. "Listen, Annabeth, there were some visions that Hestia showed me about Luke." Maybe that was just a safe guess, or maybe she knew what he'd been holding back. Or maybe, just maybe, she'd been having dreams of her own. Yeah, he said. The first time you and him met, and Thalia, and Luke's dad, Luke promised he'd never let me get hurt. He said we'd be a new family and turn out better than his. I talked to Thalia about it. She's afraid that, well, she's worried that I can't face Luke? She asked miserably. Well, yeah, but there's something else. Ethan thought Luke was still alive inside his body, possibly fighting for control. She looked up at the Empire State, then looked back and said, "Percy, for so long in my life, I felt like everything was changing so much all the time. I didn't have anyone I could rely on. I thought I found a new family when I found Luke and Thalia, but it fell apart almost immediately. What I'm trying to say is, I hate it when people let me down, when things are temporary. I think that's why I wanted to be an architect." "To build something permanent," Percy said, "like a monument that could last 1,000 years. "I guess that sounds like my fatal flaw again," she said. "I guess I understand how you feel," said Percy. "But you must realize by now that Thalia was right. Luke had gone to the other side years before Kronos ever got into his head. Heck, it was years before he ever even met me or any of us. We know that now. We've known that for years, and we've lost so many friends since then. And we could end up losing a lot more unless we stop him. I don't want to lose you the same way, especially after what happened on the bridge." She pursed her lips. She was probably trying her best not to get mad. "And you'll understand if I keep hoping there's a chance that you're wrong, Percy." And she walked away. He felt like he'd done his best, but it didn't make him feel any better. Then, before Percy knew it, he was standing somewhere else. He was standing in a bar, and next to him, playing an arcade game, was Mr. D. "Mr. D, what's going on?" he asked. "Where are we? Is this a dream?" Mr. D explained that he was still knocked out, but he managed to send part of his consciousness to this bar and pulled part of Percy's consciousness over here so they could talk. "Surely even you've learned by now we Olympians can exist in many places at once," he said. "It should take me another several hours to fully recover. In the meantime, part of my consciousness is here at this lovely party." "So, what did you want to tell me?" Percy asked. "Oh, I wasn't really trying to look for you in particular. I could have pulled out any one of you heroes back there, like your girlfriend, that Annie girl or something." "You mean Annabeth? And she's not my whatever." "Anyway, the point of bringing you here was so that I could deliver a warning. We are in serious danger." "Gosh, I never would have guessed," Percy said. "Indeed," said the wine god. "The situation is worse than you can imagine. You probably don't realize how serious things are outside your little safe bubble in New York." I'm not sure if I could call it safe," said Percy. "We're still dealing with monsters attacking Olympus." "Believe me, said Mr. D. "The mortals out here are panicking. Typhon has terrified them, but very few are enjoying themselves. Like Bobby Earl and his friends over there. They are quite slow. They haven't yet figured out that the world is currently crumbling into chaos. If Olympus falls, not only will the Olympians fade, but also everything that is connected to our legacy, the whole fabric of this puny civilization." "The fabric of civilization?" "Yes, your entire society will dissolve. Perhaps not right away, but mark my words, the chaos of the Titans will mean the end of everything. Law, wine, music, video games, all the things that make life worth living will disappear." "So why aren't the Olympians rushing back to help us?" Percy asked. "We should combine forces, forget Typhon." "The truth is, Perry the Jackson Puss, the Olympians will never admit this, but we actually need you puny mortals to rescue Olympus. You see, we are the manifestations of your culture. Unless heroes like you care a whole awful lot and enough to save Olympus yourselves, nothing is going to get better." "Like Pan," Percy said, "depending on the satyrs to save the wild." "Now you've learned something," said Mr. D. "I will deny I ever said this, of course, but the Olympians need heroes. They always have. Otherwise, we would not keep you annoying brats around." "Gee, thanks. I feel so wanted," Percy said sarcastically. "You're quite welcome. Just simply use the training I've given you at Cab." "What training? You've never trained me. Chiron did all that," Percy said. "As I recall, I once predicted you would turn out to be just as selfish as all the other famous heroes. Now here's your chance to prove me wrong. You must save Olympus, Pedro, leave Typhon to the Olympians, and save our own seats of power. This must be done." "Great," said Percy. "Nice little chat. Now, if you don't mind, my friends are going to be wondering—"
"There's more," said Mr. D. "Kronos has not yet attained full power. The body of the son of Hermes was a temporary measure."
"Yeah," said Percy. "We kind of guessed that."
"And did you kind of guessed that in a day at the most that Kronos will burn away that mortal body and take on the true form of a Titan king?"
"And that would mean—"
"Oh, you must know how we gods in our true forms can be dangerous in the presence of mortals."
"Yeah, the sight alone would kill us."
"Well, a Titan's form would be 10 times as bad, and once he is fully formed, he will empower the other Titans. They will be even more powerful than ever compared to now, unless you can stop them."
Percy probably should have been terrified, but he felt like he was already as scared as he could get. "So, can I go now?" he asked.
"Oh, one more thing. My son, Pollux. If he is by any chance still alive back there, I'd very much appreciate it if you kept him that way. I know how hard it was for him to accept his twin brother Castor's passing. I would hate to see him go out the same way."
Percy tried to wrap his mind around the idea that Mr. D was actually a caring father. He wondered how many of the other Olympians were worried about their kids right now. "I'll do my best," Percy said.
"Your best," Mr. D muttered. "Well, isn't that reassuring? Go on, then. You have some nasty surprises waiting for you back there."
"What?" With the wave of the wine god's hand, Percy was back in the same place where he was talking with Annabeth. She didn't give any sign that he'd been gone or anything, but she caught him staring and frowned. "What?" she asked.
"Oh, nothing," he said.